Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Exodus Project, joint with Clouds of Torah. I'm joined with my good friend, Davon Mays.
Shalom.
Plenty of his works, written works, books down in the description, so feel free to check those out. Pick one up, helps him out, helps me out, helps everyone out, and you're going to learn something along the way. But today we're going to kind of really zoom in on a topic we spent quite a while on, when we talked about the whole Antichrist topic. But now we're going to zoom in just on the mark of the beast. We have lots of content on this coming down the pipe, but we're gonna stick to just a few minutes, few slides at a time to really hash out the entire issue. But before we get started, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, give Dave and I a big thumbs up, and be sure to check out Clouds of Torah on YouTube. Follow him, like his videos, get his following up. But yeah, Davon, what do you anything to say before we get started here?
Not really. I think the slides will speak for themselves, but we are going to keep it short and sweet. Let y'all digest a little bit of this. And Steve has a good eye on history, so we're going to see how the book of Revelation plays out in our time and how it played out in ancient times, because in our time it's used as a futuristic prophecy type of a book. Right. But we're going to show what the church thought of it when it was released or published, for that,
right,
for lack of a better term. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. Coming through.
Looks good. The Mark of the Beast, the Clouds of Torah, and Exodus Project presentation.
Temporary context.
Revelation 13:17, and that no one may buy or sell except one who had the mark or the number of the beast or the number of his name. The beast is a governing power, not a physical animal, just for those who are new to this concept. Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. Daniel 7:7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Today, you can buy and sell in America without money that has faces of government officials and serial numbers on. I'm sorry, I misread that. Today, can you buy and sell in America without money that has faces of government officials and serial numbers on them?
Nope. Or a bank card that has a serial number, a routing number, an account number.
Yep. Yeah. It's got all those numbers, right? And on the face of the money, you got presidents, right? We got the White House on the back of coins. You got other, languages. You have Latin on the money.
Yep.
One of the reasons Revelation and Daniel are here, because they both talk about something that has 10 horns. Now,
Revelation draws on Daniel big time.
Big time. So from a Tanakh perspective, reading Revelation, then knowing what Daniel says, you're like, okay, were they trying to use the same exact thing and change it like the New Testament is known to do? Or is it talking about a whole nother concept, but using the same thing? This is, classic replacement theology. We're going to take a topic and change the names and the places, but we're trying to convey a message here, but using a template, basically.
Right.
So this right here is kind of where this, the mark of the beast is known to be in Revelation 13. Christians, will tell you, without it, you can't buy or sell. Well, if this was such a futuristic prophecy, why in the time of the Romans was there already faces on the money.
Oh yeah,
We
that was the first thing. That was the first thing that Caesar did. Is when you took
yeah,
over, you made new money with your face on it. It was the first thing.
first thing. So people weren't really looking for a futuristic thing when they had revelation because they already knew, well, we already see this today. So, you
Right.
know, we'll get into a little bit more of that. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And one more thing to consider is whenever in Revelation you see like see, because we know that this is going to be allegorical, right? Metaphorical
big time.
symbology. You know, 7 heads, 10 horns. You know, 10 Caesars on 7 hills. You know what I mean? But whenever you see like sea, that means all the nations. Like the
Right.
seas in Revelation are a symbology for the nations. So what it's saying here is that a empire is going to rise up and conquer the whole world. So when you start to look back into the first century or early second century when this was written, it's very clear that contemporary, as we have here, the contemporary context is this is really a polemic against Rome and its empire.
And even today, we have the law of the sea. Look it
Hmm.
up. What does that mean in the law books?
Ready to move on?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. What does Jesus say about the beast?
So it's interesting that the book of Revelation says that the beast sits on 7 hills. So what did Jesus know about this beast? Matthew 22:15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words, and they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Interesting.
Mm, mm.
Saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then, what you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. They brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Therefore, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So little did Paul, or the writer of Revelation, know that Jesus just handed you to the beast from a Christian perspective. If you are to render Caesar's things that are Caesar's, and the beast requires you to get this number and the number of its name and the sign on your hand and forehead, do you have to give him that? According to Jesus, yes.
Yep. Yep. Number of his name. What do we see here on the coin? This is a coin of Tiberius, which would have been at the time when this exchange supposedly took place. Tiberius would have been the ruler at the time. So you can see there his name is on there. Caesar, I do believe his name was Caesar Augustus Tiberius. So that's why you have Tiberius Caesar Augustus. That's the name that's kind of like contracted there on the coin. You see that? How it's like TI and then Caesar and then another,
Mm,
and it's
mm,
Augustus on the other side. So
right.
Tiberius Caesar Augustus. So if the name, how do you normally do commerce with coins from hand to hand, right? I
Hand to hand.
mean, you have to and something else that's striking is in Revelation you see that the righteous have the mark of the lamb on their foreheads or the name of God on their foreheads, right? So you not only have the bad people with the name of the 666 person on their forehead or their right hand, but the good guys have that too, but no one takes that literally. So why should we why should we take the other part literally when it could just be representative of you buying and selling, coins that have this guy's name on them? Because at the time of the destruction of the temple, Titus is, clearly the person whose face and name would be on the coins. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's very, very striking. And also, it's funny that it says the Pharisees and the Herodians walk up to Jesus and ask this. It's almost like a stark contrast from Judas of Galilee, who his whole shtick was, we're not paying taxes. So it's almost like a polemic against him at the same time, right?
I'm glad you brought up the thing about for it to is it literal or is it symbolic? Is there really a sign on your hand and on your forehead? And are people really having a sign of God's name written on their forehead, or is it just symbolic, or a concept? Because we see in Proverbs, bind them on the tablets of your heart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Bind the commandments on the tablet of your heart. Well, technically, that's not literal. It's just saying embrace them. You know what I'm saying? So when to take things literally and symbolically, you really have to understand the context and the culture of who's speaking, who's being spoken to, and how did the culture understand these concepts.
Right. If you're good-minded, your hands will produce good things, right? If you're bad-minded, your hands will produce bad things. It's very simple. Really, I don't think I've been listening to a lot on Revelation lately, and basically the whole consensus, even Augustine, the whole reason Revelation's in the New Testament to begin with, didn't believe this stuff was literal. Right? The millennium, the 1,000-year reign, all these things. He believed this was all just allegory for the church age.
Right.
Like he believed he was living in the millennium. So
he had a good reason. I mean, Mark says the time is fulfilled. Mark 1:15.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have made it in if Augustine didn't if he didn't come around and bring out City of God a few years later and really just lay it all out, we wouldn't even understand how it made it in. But Augustine was the driving force. In the 5th century, I think it wasn't until 393, so the very, very end of the 4th century, was Revelation actually, agreed upon by East and West. And then Augustine releases City of God in the early 400s to really show how and why it made it in there in the first place.
400 years after the fact. That's a long time. That's a very long time. And it was only because of the power that Rome had and the church had to even push this agenda.
Yeah.
So, that means for the first 400 years, not many Christians even knew about Revelation, let alone understood it to be thinking it's about, some future event when they're actually living under the Roman Empire that had this authority.
Right.
So,
I mean, fast track to like the father of modern Christianity, Martin Luther. He didn't believe it was a holy book. In his Bible, it was put at the very end in small print. He believed that it was not even on the same par as the Gospels. In fact, it was the only book that it didn't have verse numbers, didn't have chapter numbers, but what he did put in there was pictures. He illustrated it. And every time like the Antichrist comes up or something like that, he would put a picture of the Pope. So Martin Luther was really like the first person to weaponize Revelation for an agenda.
The Pope is the beast. Wow, what a concept. Okay, I won't start.
Okay.
Just
got to point the beast.
Romans 13:1. Now, this is what I was talking about when Jesus says, give Caesar's things unto Caesar's. So if Caesar wants you to get that mark, are you to give Caesar his things, right? What does Paul think about this? Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, the beast. For there.
Well, look who it's written to, Davon. Before you even move on, look who it's written to.
Oh my! Is that do the Romans have their own book, y'all? Okay, here we go. Who put that in there? Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. So basically, the beast is saying us, right? For there is no authority except from God, us, and those that exist have been instituted by God, us, the Romans. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. And Jesus
If
said,
that's the
"Gifts."
case, oh, sorry. I
No,
was just
just
gonna
real
say, if
quick.
that's the case, could Hanukkah have ever happened?
Oh my goodness, how does that work? You
And
cannot
Jesus celebrated
rebel,
Hanukkah. It's right in the New Testament.
right? You can't rebel. If this holds true, you could never overthrow a tyrannical government. You could take the Constitution and put it in the trash.
Hmm.
If this is what it is, you don't have any rights to overthrow the government because they're appointed by God, according to Romans. How
Right.
ironic, right? So if Jesus says, give Caesar's things unto Caesar, it says right here, you will incur judgment if you resist the beast.
Hmm.
For rulers are not a terror to good conduct. So if you're a good person, you should get the mark.
Hmm.
But too bad. You're bad if you don't get the mark. Would you have no fear for the one who is in authority? Would the beast be in authority? You do not fear the beast? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval.
Hmm.
For he is God's servant for your good. The beast is for your good. The mark is for your good.
Oh wow.
But if you do wrong, be afraid. If you don't get the chip, according to the critic, because this is all about the chip, right?
Good shit. Well, now it's the COVID vaccine that
Or
there's
the
that
or COVID, right?
microchips in.
Yeah. Anything to insert something into your body, right?
Right.
Be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. He does not have the power in vain, for he is the servant of God. You notice he. Who is he? Because when Christians hear he, they always want to make it a single. It says he, but we know this is talking about the Roman Empire.
Right.
It's not talking about a single person. Isaiah 53, he can't
Hmm.
be talking about the nation. It says he. So I want Christians to be honest and tell me who is the he it's talking about in Romans. Who is the servant of God that this authority is given to in the book of Romans? Okay. For he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. So when Pilate sent Jesus to be crucified, what was he doing?
Oh.
Therefore, one must be
Or
in subjection. Go ahead.
or when when this is more Protestants that would say this type of stuff, like from the Fox's Book of Martyrs and all that. But when they claim that Christians are being ripped apart in the Colosseum by lions, what'd you do to get there?
What'd you do?
Were you not listening? Were you not listening to the ones that God set over you?
You were bad. You're a sinner. What's going on, right? Therefore, one must be in subjection not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes. Let's bring it on back
Yeah.
to the question: should you pay taxes? Jesus said, "Give unto Caesar things Caesar's," right? Render unto Caesar Caesar's things. So Jesus is saying, yeah, you should be paying taxes. That's what
Paul's
Caesar
saying
wants.
Paul's saying it's a good thing. Paul's saying you're feeding the ministry when you pay taxes to
For
Rome.
the authorities are ministers of God. Exactly what you just said, Steve. Attending to this very thing. So you're in the Holy Land, you're a Jew, and you're paying taxes in your land to an invading army. But since they're the authority, you should not resist them and you should pay that tax according to Jesus and according to Paul. And if the beast came and said, you better get this sign upon your arm and upon your forehead, if you resist, you will incur judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, the Romans. Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. You must honor that beast.
Hmm. Yikes. And people wonder why scholarship, not, I mean, clearly it's not a unanimous opinion of scholarship, but why a lot of well-known New Testament scholars are like, man, Paul was Paul's a Roman propagandist.
Pro-Roman everything. He even told the Jews, they put me in jail for nothing. I've done nothing. Read Acts 28:17. I ain't did nothing to our people or nothing.
Mm-hmm. But in the next breath, he would say, "Yeah, I held the coats while they stoned them,
You know,
but I ain't done
I
nothing."
voted against them to die. I
Mm-hmm.
imprisoned them. Yeah. So Romans 13:1 and Matthew, according to Jesus, are hand in hand.
Yep.
You should obey the beast
Mm-hmm.
because it's God's agent and a minister of God that you pay for it with your tax money. So you put in on it.
And you are obligated to pay in on it. You need to pay taxes who you owe taxes to. You need to pay revenue who you owe revenue to. You need to honor who deserves honor. And all this context is talking about the imperial non-Jewish authorities.
For because of this, you also pay taxes. It's right there in the text. Because he's a minister of God, you help fund it. According to Romans 13. Okay.
Submit yourself to every ordinance.
Every ordinance. Back to Romans 13:1. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. It don't say the Christian or the non-Christian or the Jew or the non-Jew. It says every person. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So according to this, you have no escape from the beast. 1 Peter 2:13, submit yourself to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be the king as supreme, or unto governors, Pilate, and unto those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do well.
So if I can just relay this back to Hanukkah real fast. It says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. The governing authorities were saying, you know what? We don't want to kill you. We don't even want to hurt you. Just stop practicing Judaism, accept Hellenism, and, you can be perfectly functioning citizens, and we're going to be just fine. So if we were to take Paul's message and backtrack it 200 years, Paul's basically saying everyone should be Hellenized. Forget Judaism.
He was.
Whichever governing authority is over you, whatever they say, go on and do it. They're there for a reason.
I mean, we can even take this back to Daniel when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't want to bow to the statue.
Right. Or when Daniel himself prayed out his window.
Right. Y'all see this? Y'all see what's going on here? Now, submit yourself to every ordinance of man. Now, remember, because Christians like to say this, we will obey God rather than men. Don't the disciples say that?
Mm-hmm.
But it says, submit yourself to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. That's the opposite of what the disciples said.
Right. But there is no authority except from God.
Right.
Those who are in authority exist only because it's been instituted by God. So therefore, by extension, he's saying that no matter who is over you, it's God ordained.
God ordained.
You need to respect them as if you're respecting God. That's the message.
It's interesting that they got Peter writing such a thing when the disciples said, we will obey God rather than men. But
Right.
now Peter is saying, submit yourself to every ordinance of man. What's going on here? Unto governors as unto those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. So anybody that the government sends out, you did something wrong. You cannot resist. You must submit yourself and be subject to the governing authorities, aka the beast. which would be a government authority.
Yep.
Matthew 27:2. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him unto Pontius Pilate, the governor. So according to this, can you be mad at the Jews for taking Jesus to Pilate? They're obeying the government.
Yeah. If
Because
we concede that Peter wrote First Peter, he's the cornerstone of the church. What's he say? Submit yourselves to every ordinance, even unto governors. That's the cornerstone disciple right there, people.
Right there. So then, the argument is, well, the Pharisees were evil and wicked. They were trying to kill Jesus. Well, remember, they couldn't kill him. Because in John 19:30, Pilate actually says, I don't care what he did. Take him and judge him according to your laws. And they say, we don't have authority to kill him. So we're bringing him to you, O governor, instituted by God, according to Paul.
I think it's in the book of John. It says they tried to stone him, but he ran away. So clearly they weren't after him too hard. If he could just hightail.
Just dip out, right? Yeah. Pop up all over the place later on. And, so they delivered him to the governor, according to, Romans. This is what you're supposed to do if you feel somebody's out of pocket, right? They didn't have authority to kill him, because if they did, the Gospels would have ended very quickly. Luke 23:11, then Herod, with his men of war, treated him with contempt and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. So here we have Herod, the king, the ruling authority, giving Jesus back to Pilate to be crucified.
Yep.
You can't be mad at Herod because he's the governing authority. So whatever he says goes, because he was instituted by God. And so is Pilate. So they're excluded from any type of judgment. And the Pharisees gave him to Pilate. So they're excluded from any type of judgment because they're obeying the superior authorities, bringing in people who are not following the law. So the question is, well, Jesus didn't break any Roman laws. But did he? Did Jesus break Roman laws? Why did he tell the disciples to get swords? Why is he arming his men? On the surface, it's not a lot. It's 12 people versus the Roman Empire. But had all his disciples been armed, that would have been looked at as, what's the word, sedition? An uprising?
Yeah.
Is that the right term? Right. Now, what's interesting, and
once something gains steam, if he's having these big talks with 10,000 people in front of him,
right,
that looks a bit bigger than 12 people.
A little bit bigger, which is why scholars will talk about this. Look it up if you don't believe me. When they went to arrest Jesus, it says in the Greek, a lot of soldiers went to get him. It wasn't just a couple of people. They went like they were looking for a battle.
He had zealots in his ranks. Simon the Zealot. We spoke about this before. That means he has violent fanatics in the ranks of his following.
And what did Peter do? He started swinging, right? Yeah, cut off dude's ear. Like, what is going down, right?
Yep.
So, when you really put into perspective, from that perspective, if Jesus's disciples are armed and willing to fight in order to protect their king, their God, who Hosanna in the highest, right? Remember they had a whole celebration.
Save us, save us. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That means that's sedition, and that would mean he was worthy of crucifixion, because crucifixion wasn't just for anybody. So according to this New Testament concept of obeying the superior authorities, they did exactly what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Remember,
and this Herod here in Luke 23, that's Antipas. That's the brother of Archelaus, who Joseph heard Archelaus was taken over, and he was even more scared than when his dad was in charge.
Which makes the infant narratives, they don't work. Because Luke has him going back and forth to Jerusalem every Passover from the time he was a baby, but Matthew says he was scared to go back.
Right.
That's
And
another topic.
Antipas lived in Sepphoris. Sepphoris is literally 3 miles from Nazareth. Do you really think the brother of the king you're all that afraid of, 3 miles away, almost your next door neighbor? You really think he wouldn't find out if you're coming back?
Right.
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 Be like,
Especially
yo,
all the hype
he would,
around Jesus too.
right, right. He would just send out dispatch a messenger. Hey, Archelaus, bro, I got him. He's 3 miles away. What do you want me to do with him? If he's really that afraid of these people,
Right.
you know?
If his dad was really willing to kill all those babies that he never did, then Jesus comes back. He just kind of forgot about it. Like, we'll let him live. He's going to be the Messiah one day, but we don't care. And Herod didn't seem to be bothered by him. It says, actually, when you read Luke 23, it says Herod wanted to see some miracles.
Mm-hmm.
So he already was aware that this is the so-called Messiah. Show me your stuff.
Right.
They wasn't concerned with Jesus being anybody special. And then they had him killed.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal.
Yep.
He's just another Jew, just like Judas of Galilee in Acts chapter 5, just like Theudas in Acts chapter 5. Oh, you had a couple little people following you. Oh, we're going to crucify you and go drink wine.
Yep. And the Herods, what nationality were they?
Edomites.
They were Edomites. And what is Rome? What is Rome compared to? Edom.
All day. The fourth beast.
There's even some Talmudic literature that says the first Christians were Edomites. The first
The
people
fourth
to
beast, yeah.
the first people to convert were Edomites.
Makes sense that they would make up the fourth beast.
Mm-hmm.
Read Psalm 83. Read Gog and Magog.
Read the whole book of the one chapter of Obadiah. It's all about Edom's destruction.
Yep. And read Exodus, where it says God will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation. Well, who is Amalek a descendant of?
Yep.
Edom.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes, all roads lead to Rome. How true is this statement? Right. So the powers that are ordained by God, this will be Herod and Pontius Pilate, right here in Luke 23, unto governors as unto those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. So again, back to Pontius Pilate. So was Jesus punished by the authority issued by God? It's a yes or no question.
According to Paul and Peter, it would certainly seem that way.
Right. Now, we didn't write this. This is the text. We're just quoting the text.
Mm-hmm.
This is all from Romans 13, from Peter, and from Jesus himself.
Yep.
We see the Gospels on the screen. The last statement was my question. Was Jesus punished by the authority issued by God? According to the book of Romans, yes. So God killed himself under the authority he instituted. According to the Trinitarians.
Yikes.
So,
did the Jews take Jesus to the governor?
So let's bring it back. 1 Peter 2:14, unto governors as unto those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. Luke 20:20. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be righteous, that they might seize on his words in order to deliver him to the power and the authority of the governor. Instituted by God.
There's something really striking there. If you can't be righteous, how can someone pretend to be righteous?
Right. And did Luke write that? I thought Luke and Paul were buddies.
Well, Luke's calling people righteous via the law all over the place. So
y'all go read Luke 1:6 and compare that to Galatians 2:21 and let me know what y'all think.
Yeah. Yeah.
John 18:28. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. I thought they already ate the Passover John's gospel is different.
Uh-oh.
Side note. So Pilate went outside to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death." Like I said earlier, if the Jews could have killed Jesus, they would have did it, and the Gospels would have ended right there.
Yep.
But Pilate was the governor. He was the authority. Roman said, you got to listen to the authority. So when you see somebody out of line, you got to go tell. They told. So the Jews are not wrong, and Pilate's not wrong, according to Romans or First Peter.
Yeah, it's actually extremely what's the word I'm looking for? Extremely consistent.
It's extremely
It's
consistent.
actually this is one respect it's extremely consistent on that if you respect the authorities, if someone's doing something wrong, you bring them to the authorities and the authorities handles it.
Call the police. They called the police. So, what do you do with that? The beast is given authority to the powers that be, right? If you got the president, then you got the governors, and you got the police. Like it's tiered down.
Mm-hmm.
But according to Paul and Jesus, you're supposed to obey that authority. So if the beast on the financial tip of things say, well, look, you need to get this mark in order to buy and sell. Well, if you resist that, according to Paul and Jesus, then you out of pocket,
Yep.
literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is, I'm pretty sure that, the comments are going to be a little upset, but we're reading the text here. Like,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? We got Peter and Luke and John on the screen.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? So
And
there you have it. I mean, is that the
the
last slide?
fundamentalists would say that Revelation is the same author as the Gospel of John.
There you go.
Not necessarily, I don't necessarily agree, but fundamentalist who, if I mean, most,
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of fundamentalists watch this. How could the Gospel of John and the Apocalypse of John disagree that much?
It kind of depends on who you ask. Like you said, you got some that agree, some that don't. The thing is from Matthew to Revelation, it's not consistent anyway.
Right.
So even if they were the same author, here's an example. John, if John wrote Revelation, he contradicts himself and he supports himself.
Oh, yeah.
Paul contradicts himself all the time in all his letters, and he
Yeah.
supports himself.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new.
Yeah. And something else that's very incredible is, Christians will harp on that the God of the Old Testament was the God of wrath, right? Not a
Right.
God of love, but that transitions in the New Testament. Well, if you read Revelation, what it's saying is happening. No one's making it out. Like, there's 21 judgments, and each one's like wiping out a third of the world. So, like, who's going to be
Right.
left by the time the 21 judgments are over?
Right.
And it says it's written to the seven churches, and it's basically saying like, you guys aren't doing it right. You're going to get wiped out. This is being written to churches.
To churches. So if he's willing to kill his own churches, that God of the Revelation, if it's not the God of Israel, then
Yeah,
he's pretty mean too.
there's nothing about love in Revelation. It's actually probably the most wrathful book.
The
You know,
seven bowls poured out, and all these different things. Like it's not
right.
not a
At
pretty
least at
sight.
least throughout Tanakh, God says, I'm going to punish you to teach you a lesson, because I love you and I want you to be better. right? That's the main message is though
Right.
those who God loves, he chastens, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get to
Mm-hmm.
Revelation, it's just like, oh no, I'm ticked off.
I'm done.
Squash, squash,
Yeah,
squash,
I'm
squash,
done with y'all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And contrary to most Christian belief, the ones who rule with God are actually the martyrs, not the bride of Christ, not those taken in the rapture, because the rapture is actually not even in the book of Revelation. Um, all these different things, the ones who are ruling with him are the martyrs. So does this kind of put it in perspective who this is being written to at what time? If Nero was putting putting Christians in the Colosseum and
Well, there's a problem. It says in Revelation, you see those who were beheaded for the testimony of Jesus, right?
mm-hmm,
Luke 10:19 says, nothing will harm you.
mm,
But maybe that was a different gospel. Paul got his own gospel. Maybe Luke had his own gospel. I don't know.
maybe,
But
maybe.
that's what it says. Nothing will harm you. I will give you authority to trample over all the enemy.
Mm-hmm,
Read Luke 10:19. If you have power over all the enemy and they can't harm you, how do you become a martyr?
right. That's kind of like the whole theme of Revelation is the balance of power shifts.
It's
Rome's done and it's our turn,
doesn't work, y'all. Yeah. So, this would be, I guess you can say, part one of the beast or whatever we're going to call this. But so far, Jesus and Paul say, get the mark. Because
Yep.
if not, you are resisting the authority given by God.
Hmm. Pretty sobering thought for most who are going to watch this, I'm sure. So,
Not a
but
good
yeah,
look so far.
more to come, people. Much more to come. But Davon, any closing remarks before we let these
Reread
people off the hook?
Revelation after you read the Gospels and put in context. How do you view authority?
Mm-hmm.
Read Revelation and then read Romans 13. How do you make that work?
Right. Hmm.
Because we see in Daniel, they said, "Oh King, we do not care if you throw us in the fire. We want you to know we not worshiping your gods. So do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much." Right. So we know how the Tanakh feels about breaking the laws,
Right.
but
Yep.
there you
Supposed
have it.
to lay down your life before bowing to an idol. So I don't know. It's pretty crystal clear to me.
Yep. I will say there is an exception in the book of Kings, chapter 5. Naaman says, "Oh God, please have mercy on me when I go into the temple with my king." And he puts his hand and we have to kneel before, I forget the name of the god. So under compulsion, B'nai Noach
Right. Right.
do have the mercy of not bowing to idols, but Jews do not.
Mm-hmm.
So just to be clear on that.
Right. Right. And what else did Naaman do? He literally took soil from Israel so he could make his own uh bumma, his own personal altar, so he could have his own services to God, bring his own offerings. He actually
Really?
took he took dirt from the land and took it back to Aram with him, and so for anyone who says that Jesus is the last sacrifice, Jew and Gentile, Gentiles can still bring offerings, people. It's not something you're going to hear a whole lot, but it's actually completely true.
There's a verse. Incense will be offered in my name, says the Lord, by all the nations.
Mm-hmm.
It don't say our name, it says my name.
Yep.
So yeah, we can keep going, y'all, but we wanted to keep it real simple.
Yep.
Dealing with the beast, and that's just the opener is Paul and Jesus say, get the mark, or you're being bad. You're being a
Yeah.
bad person.
Being bad. But all right, everybody. This was the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower. Dave on Maids, Clouds of Torah. Be sure to check him out on YouTube. Grab a book in the description. But this was the Exodus Project. We'll see you next time, everybody.